Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the PressProsMagazine.com Monday Huddle. I'm Bruce Hooley. The gentleman beside me is Sonny Folks. And for the next half hour-ish, we'll be talking to you about all the stories that matter to us and to you at PressProsMagazine.com. Mr. Folks is back from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he hung into the bitter end. Bottom of the ninth inning on Sunday night, and the Ohio State Buckeyes finally rewarded his diligence in making the trip with a comeback victory over the Maize and Blue.
Interesting place to be. Honestly, shout out, by the way, to Kurt Swoboda, who's their SID up there. Their staffing sports information department up there is superb. Took great care of Press Pros Magazine. Certainly appreciate the accommodations and their hospitality. And in fact, the baseball, if you didn't care who won, was exciting, if not predictable. Certainly, again, you can make the point for Ohio State's being young this year in the ways of how to win games that you could win and don't win. But they're getting some OTJ that you just can't get you can't get it out of a textbook. I know that. The only way you get it is by playing, and they're taking their lumps on some of these weekends and came within a game of dropping two successive sweeps.
Yes.
They did lose a series a week ago to Maryland, and that was a sweep, but they avoided the sweep at Michigan, and you could tell in the ninth inning of that game how much that sweep meant to those 2,279 people sitting in the stands who came expressly to see them get beat three in a row. But that didn't happen thanks to Trey Lipsy and Mitchell Oakley, Cade Kern, and Colton Bauer, and a great relief job to record the win by T.J. Brock in the bottom of the ninth inning. So an exciting finish to the final game of that series yesterday afternoon.
Now I have a puzzled look on my face because you said they got what? Some OTJ?
On the job training.
I thought you were like old toe jam, or I could.
No, not old toe jam. It was on the job training, and honestly, you can talk about the fact of learning. Kids have to learn how to win. Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Is the only way you learn how to win is taking your lumps sometimes. And people who think that's not a big deal or it isn't important, whether you win or lose, it's how much character you show and how good the handshake line. That's baloney. When you're at that level of competition, those kids that want to win, they expect to win, and sometimes you have to learn how to win. And this is an Ohio State program is 13-23 now for the year. They're having one of their worst years in the decade that we've covered it. And but again, I think you can make the case for the fact that you're talking about some talented kids who've been sitting on the shelf for 2 years, albeit have played some summer baseball in Chillicothe or Springfield or the Prospect League or the Northwest League or this league and that league. It's not the same as playing Maryland and Michigan and Illinois and Nebraska and some of the teams like that vying for the NCAA tournament. Just not the same animal. And, it was a big win for them yesterday. And Greg Beals and I talked a little bit about that in his post-game comments because they have Rutgers coming in this weekend, who has not been good since their inclusion in the Big Ten. But they are now because they're a senior-laden team. Where some programs were stockpiling freshman classes, these guys had a bunch of upperclassmen that took advantage of the extra year of NCAA eligibility granted because of COVID. And those guys have all come of age. It's like playing now Brigham Young because all those guys have been on missions throughout the world for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Now they come back, finish up their schooling and playing varsity baseball, and they're 25, 26, 27 years old. So, this is valuable OTJ for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Well, we are presented by our friends at Lehman's Old Time General Store. They are also the presenting sponsor of the Lowdown every couple days on the PressProsMagazine.com site. We award a $50 Lehman's gift card to one lucky listener or watcher or reader. All you have to do to enter is send an email to pressproscontest@gmail.com, pressproscontest@gmail.com, and say, I want to win.
Sign me up.
we will award, or you can say, sign me up. You can say anything you want. You really don't even have to say anything. Just the fact that you email pressproscontest@gmail.com makes you a possible winner. We draw the name at the end of the month. That is fast approaching. And thank you to our friends at Lehman's. You can shop online at lehmans.com, LEHMANS.com, Lehman's Hardware and Old Time General Store, just south of Route 30 on Kidron Road as you're headed to Canal Park for the state baseball. What's the park for the state softball? I'm not sure what that one is.
It's the Akron AA Park.
The Rubber Ducks. The Rubber Ducks Stadium. Yes.
Yeah, Canal Park, downtown Akron. A nice place to watch a baseball game.
Or if you've been to the state football finals at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, well, you know where Kidron Road is. It's on Route 30 just before you get to Massillon. And so check it out or shop online right now at LEHMANS.com and use the promo code PressPros10. You'll get 10% off every time you shop at Lehman's. Some really super cool, unique products. You might see them on Shark Tank. Might be made by an Amish craftsman, like the garden hoe that Sonny Folks bought the last time we were at Lehman's. You can dine in their cafe. It is an experience to go, an awesome place. And don't miss the antique collection up top. Got to look around when you're at Lehman's or you will miss half the attraction. Make sure you tour the wooden carving room. It's a really fun day trip. Lehman's Hardware and Old Time General Store, just south of Route 30 on Kidron Road in Kidron. Get those entries in, pressproscontest@gmail.com.
Let me share this about my first trip to Lehman's. I went there with you. This was, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
About 10 o'clock in the morning. And the next thing I knew, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
It is the Disney of hardware stores, the Disneyland or Disney World of hardware stores, because when you get there, there's no shortage of things to look at, experience, see, buy, talk about, anything. It's they say it right. We have everything you never knew you needed. So
never knew you always needed. That's close. But yes, Lehman's Hardware and Old Time General Store. All right, couple headlines.
Here we go.
NFL Draft is coming up. NFL Draft is Thursday night, first round, Friday, second and third round, Saturday, 4th through 7th rounds. And if the mock drafts are right, Sonny Folks, we will have an Ohio college football player picked in the top 5, but it will not be an Ohio State Buckeye. It will be Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, the cornerback who is projected to go number 4 to the New York Jets. And then Peter King, who's as good an authority on the NFL as anybody I know, he has Garrett Wilson 9, Jamison Williams, Alabama, by way of Ohio State, 10, and Chris Olave, 11. And that's it for Ohio State Buckeyes and for Cincinnati Bearcats. Peter King does not have Des Ridder, the Bearcat quarterback, going in the first round, nor does he have Nicholas Petit-Free, the Buckeye tackle, going in the first round. So that'll be good news for the Browns. They sit there with the 44th pick. Bengals are picking next to last because, of course, they lost the Super Bowl, and they are in the market for a tight end, and there should be a decent one on the board when they pick. They'll get Joe Burrow another weapon to go with Jamar Chase and all the offensive linemen they signed in the offseason. So first-round NFL draft on Thursday, and I can only imagine how locked in you are sitting in your office reading mock drafts around the clock.
I'm not really I just mentioned before we came on here, I've been amazed for years at what a made-for-TV moment the draft has become.
Oh, yes.
Because I have as little interest in the NFL draft as anybody with a sports background that you'll ever meet. That said, the reason I do is there are so many first-round draft choices that are absolute busts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the quarterback that the Chargers took a few years ago. I can't even remember his name.
Ryan Leaf.
And for that matter, Baker Mayfield.
No.
You know, all this hype about Tim Couch and Baker Mayfield and all these people that can't miss. Hey, look, for every one of those, I'm more interested in the Ken Andersons from Augustana College.
Tiny Augustana. Tiny Augustana.
I really am. And I think the thing that intrigues me about this year's draft, and in particularly with the Bengals are in a pretty good position. They just signed 2 or 3 free agent offensive linemen that are going to help their cause in protecting their quarterback immensely. And those guys are going to come in and contribute immediately because they're veterans. But when you start looking at the people they find in the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and 6th rounds, you know, the guys that somehow fell through somebody's crack, they don't play for Ohio State. They don't play for Southern Cal. They don't play for Alabama or LSU or these kind of profile teams. Those are the kids that I think really make the draft interesting. And the Bengals have feasted off the Ken Rileys and people like that, the Ken Anderson and Ken Rileys and so forth for years and years and years. So that intrigues me a lot more than who gets picked, who's the first cornerback taken, who's the first quarterback taken, who's the first wide receiver. I certainly think Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are going to go. At least one of them are going to go in the first round. I really expect maybe Olave to go in the second.
Really? Okay.
Well, he may slide to the second just based on other drafts and guys who felt like they can't miss in the first round. But there are a lot. It's a rich class, if you believe the Peter Kings and the guys who make a living at predicting the draft for wide receivers. So it'll be interesting to see where those guys go.
Now, there are guys who have such a mundane life that they do a 2-round mock draft. CBS Sports has one of those unfortunate souls, and he has the Cleveland Browns with the 44th pick in the draft, their first selection, because they traded one of their 3 first-rounders this year. They don't have 3 this year. They traded 3 first-rounders to Houston for Deshaun Watson, and this year's first-rounder is a part of the 3. They have the Browns picking Jahan Dotson of Penn State, a wide receiver. And then they have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 52 picking Desmond Ridder, quarterback of Cincinnati. I will tell you this. With Deshaun Watson headed for a certain NFL suspension, I would draft Desmond Ridder at 44 if he's on the board, so I have a backup plan at quarterback in case Watson things go really south and he never suits up. And I would keep Des Ridder out of black and gold that way. So that's what I would do, but I'm just saying, don't always do what I would do. That if Des Ridder's on the board at 44, I'm taking him.
I think you might be surprised that there may be another great quarterback on the board at 44 besides Des Ridder.
Might be.
Honestly. And I listened to some talk radio this afternoon, right there from your own hometown. Sorry to say not your station, but
oh my goodness, you took one for the team if you were listening to that.
And the whole idea with these guys was, hey, look, you draft foundation pieces, offensive linemen, rush ins, a quarterback if you can get him. But those guys right there, and they were talking the whole conversation about how important cornerbacks have become in the last decade because of the impact of the passing game now in football at every level, and particularly in the NFL. So there may be that kid from Liberty, or there may be one of those guys like that, one of the more profiled quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to be Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to be going in the first draft, in the first round to somebody. But, there may be somebody there every year. You go back and you think about Rodgers, and the Packers took him and how far he fell in the first round before they finally drafted him. So you may have that scenario. And that to me is what makes it more interesting than the can't miss guy that's the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth pick of the draft.
All right. When we talk quarterbacks, unfortunately, we have to talk about the sad passing of Dwayne Haskins. He had one of 2 memorial services today. This one at his Maryland high school. Ryan Day, the Ohio State coach, spoke, of course, glowingly of Dwayne Haskins, who threw 50 touchdown passes for the Buckeyes in 2018. But the really unusual quirk of the Dwayne Haskins memorial service, if you want to know why 2, he had one on Saturday at which his wife attended, and his parents did not attend that one in Pittsburgh because they said they have never met Dwayne Haskins' wife and did not want to meet her at his funeral. So very tragic, the passing of Dwayne Haskins, and some degree of strangeness to his memorial services. And we will wait for a final rendering from the authorities in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as to what caused his death, other than he was hit by a dump truck while walking along the highway. And the 911 calls from his wife, which were heartbreaking to listen to, suggest that Dwayne had called her and said he was out of gas and he was going to get gas, and he would get back in his car and he would call her when he was going. And of course, That did not happen. So that is what is up with Dwayne Haskins, the former Ohio State quarterback who is gone far too soon from this life. We have a new Ohio State Buckeye in the basketball realm. His name is Sean Mcneil. He takes, I kind of guess, the place of Justin Orange, Sonny. He's a shooter from West Virginia. I don't mean a musket shooter. I don't mean like that. I mean he's a jump shooter. And he also, here's what it tells me. How many free throws do you think Justin Orange took in 4 years at Ohio State? So,
less than 50.
41. 41. Sean Mcneil, a 6'3" guard from West Virginia, 38% from three, so he's not as good a shooter as Justin Orange, but he shot 144 free throws. So he shoots twos, he gets to the line, he drives, and my guess is if he played for Hugs at West Virginia, he can at least play a little bit of defense.
My guess is if he plays for Hugs at West Virginia, he is, he plays some defense. He's a scrapper. He is a fighter. He's that guy in the locker room that he might be, I don't know, but he might be that guy you and I talk about that other people are deathly afraid of if you don't do your job.
I'd be okay. We need a little of that.
As a teammate. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I saw an instance of this on Saturday that I was telling somebody about it in the press box at Michigan. They had a young man named Joe Stewart, their center fielder, who hit not one, but 2 grand slam home runs in that game against the Buckeyes. The third time they came up and they sort of pushed him back a little bit. They threw one in near his belt and he leaned back from it.
I would hope.
The next pitch, he hit his 3rd home run of the game.
What?
So now he's got 3 for 3, all 3 home runs. He comes up in the 7th inning, and this time they buzzed the tower.
Yes, I'm gonna say he's taking a seat the 4th
They
time.
buzzed the tower. He didn't take a seat, but they really they drove him back off the plate. Well, the home plate umpire, of course, jumps out and takes off his mask. He warns everybody like you're supposed to do, no retaliation, and so forth. And there was none. I mean, they just went on and played baseball. But honestly, in the day, and I was telling people this about in the press box. In the 70s, if you played in the Big Ten and you hit 2 grand slam home runs, I guarantee you were going to go home black and blue because you were going to wear one.
Yeah,
that's the way the game is played. And some of the people who listened to my story were aghast that it was that barbaric or that Neanderthal back then that you actually played college baseball, which was a game. They said it's just a game.
Oh.
So it goes back to that part about winning. And if you didn't do that, there was going to be somebody on that team, a Jerry King or a Randy Shade or somebody, that when you got in the locker room, actually is one of our catchers, if you got back in the locker room, you were going to hear about it because you're expected to protect the teammates, protect the dignity of the game, and the fact that at that point they were getting beat 16-2. There was absolutely no reason for that guy to come in and just be swinging freely. Plus, he was standing on top of home plate. So that's how much the game has changed. And this Mcneil kid could be that kind of player where if you don't do your job as a teammate, you may be hearing about him. If you played for Bob Huggins, because Huggins is that kind of coach and demands that type of culture on his teams, you can tell that by watching them play. They push the envelope. What is it they say in football? They play to the echo of the whistle.
The echo of the whistle.
The echo of the whistle. So, and I'm like you. I think somebody like that is good for every team, and they don't exist much more anymore because we've just about outlawed that type of competitiveness from sports.
So here's a headline that I read today. Ohio State was in the running for Nigel Pack, a scoring guard from Kansas State, and Nigel Pack wound up at Miami in Florida. And the headline that I saw was, Nigel Pack picks Miami because Ohio State would not give him a car. And I thought, if you fell asleep for like a year and a half and woke up and saw that headline, you would think, wait a second, isn't that illegal? And the answer is, of course, no, not in the name, image, and likeness era. So I just thought that was funny that Nigel Pack picked Miami because they guaranteed him an $800,000 NIL haul for one season. One.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Now we're talking about that kind of thing for high school sports in the state of Ohio. That was one of the referendums, or one of the things talked about in the recent summit meeting by the OHSAA on April the 8th. How do we get out ahead of this NIL thing? And, I've had a couple of people, we talked a little bit about that this weekend, how NIL has anybody at Ohio State baseball benefited from name, image, and likeness? No. And is anybody going to benefit from it? And how would they benefit from it from high school sports? And would that come from a division of monies set aside in a fund by the OHSAA? Would it come from individual businesses within the community? I think the impact of that, if you think that through, it would be devastating. Because how do you go into the locker room and give a new car to the point guard and you tell everybody else, not so much for you guys? That's going to create some problems, on the roster. But, for some reason, people believe that in this day and age that anything goes. There's got to be money for everybody, and there's enough money to go around. And it's just hard to see how that's a good thing for high school sports.
Well, you were not in the interview room when the Division IV boys state championship game ended, and the coach from Richmond Heights began his post-game thank yous with a shout out to a car dealer. And I'm like, did he just say like a Chevrolet dealer? And he did.
Yeah.
So, hey, I don't know. I think that one might have jumped the shark on the allowability scale, but they still have the trophy, so we'll see. All right. So
I was in the interview room for the Division VII football interviews, and I didn't hear Tim Goodwin say anything.
I didn't either.
Brady
Runabaum, Peyton Oddie, I didn't hear him say anything about, thanking a car dealer in Maria Stein. All right. Let's see. What else do we have to get into? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it's become that time of the week for Sunny Folks to talk about how unfair it is for baseball to be played in the cold, rainy spring weather. Take it away, Mr. Folks.
Well, we're talking about what he's prattling on about, digging his own grave, is the latest edition of the Reader Speaks, which I will share some very good responses that we got in at least the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I share these because more than one of us has told us that for the first month of the baseball season, the local teams have played less than 10 games. And the fact of the matter is, I think I've personally written about 6 and been rained out of counting tonight 8. So we had a number of people who've written to us from around the state and outside of the state in one particular case. From Ken Slott, who wrote to us, first time reader of your website, and you're the only source I've seen that dares to suggest that we give high school baseball and softball athletes a fair opportunity to play and compete in warm, dry conditions. You're also the only one that uses the term hypocrisy, which is what it is. I hope others read and speak up. Again, Ken Slott, we appreciate your comments. Tom Killalay from Central Ohio wrote and said, if school and state administration is the reason why we can't play baseball in the summer, then it's obviously time to find some new administrators. You want to comment on Tom's response there, Mr. Hooley?
I'm with you. I mean, the weather has been not conducive to playing. These kids have every right to play games as much as basketball or football. You can't play baseball in the slop. It would be great if they would delay the start of the high school baseball season until, I don't know, May the 1st and play it through June the 15th or end of June. I don't think that'd be unreasonable. So I just like to make fun of you for.
Of course, the issue there is that a lot of administrators, that being athletic directors, say, hey, that's our family time. I got vacation time. That's not really true, because a lot of school administrators have to work through the month of June. They get the month of July off, and then it's back to school in August. So anyway, it is what it is. And I'll read you a couple more of these. Here's one from Gary McCarty. Who likes to say there's a simple way that baseball can be played in better weather. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. Football and basketball are obviously a higher priority with the OHSAA, so why not make baseball independent of the Ohio High School Athletic Association? Why should they have a monopoly on high school sports if they insist they can't make adjustments to changing weather conditions? If everything improves with competition, it's time maybe they have some of their own. Have enjoyed your site for a long time, Gary McCarty. And Gary, thanks for, by the way, the photos that you sent. We got those. We appreciated those as well. And appreciate you taking the time to write. Brian Newsom writes, enjoyed your recent article, 3 weeks of baseball, and we've played 4.5 games. I also saw the latest headlines on the OHSAA site, and there's no mention of bad spring weather or adjustment of the calendar for games lost. It's uniform adjustments for high school gymnastics. That's the headline. I also see the Baseball Weekly polls are out, where Newark Catholic was ranked third in Division 4th, and they played 4 games. Really? Brian, appreciate you writing as well. David Butcher wrote and said, we can find time for summit meetings on DEI on April the 8th, but can address kids risking injury in baseball and softball in freezing weather. I think their priorities are questionable when they can't look out the window, expletive deleted, and address current and real issues for student athletes that stare them right in the face. That's an issue that a lot of people don't understand. And honestly, David, I'm amazed that somebody like you would actually come out from behind wherever you are and write that publicly, because you said an awful lot there with very few words. Bruce?
Yeah, he did. And I concur with one of those letters who said that competition might be a good thing. And it would not surprise me if the OHSAA continues down some of the roads they're going down, that there might be an alternate organization form. And that would be very interesting to see how many small schools, rural school districts would be open to joining a rival organization if, as I said, the Ohio High School Athletic Association pursues some of the initiatives that they appear to be pursuing.
Couple more quick ones here, because I know you've got a hen to cook tonight, so we'll get you to that. Tony Goss wrote and said, I think you guys like to poke the bull with issues like this, but I do feel sorry for baseball and softball kids when you compare the percentages. There are a hell of a lot more of them than those affected by the current OHSAA referendums. Bullseye.
Bullseye. That one's on the mark. That one is a grand slam right there. He hit that out of the park with the sacks loaded.
And Tony, glad to have your comment here, and thank you for sharing it with us. Here's a reader who says, you only seem to cover those high school teams that win, so why do you continue to write about the Ohio State baseball team when their record at this time was 11-21?
That was uncalled for.
But we respond.
Yes, we do.
And whoever this was wrote, I'm teed off. Well, dear Teed, I write touche, I suppose, but there's one very obvious point in response. Ohio State has a synthetic field, and they play 95% of the time. And as I just said, we've lost 7 or 8 high school events in the last 3 weeks due to wet condition. And in addition to that, 9 of the 13 Big Ten schools, Teed, wherever you are, have synthetic fields, and others play in the minor league parks with professional ground crews. So if you travel and take the time and expense to go cover those games, you're not concerned about not playing. Now, we did go to Purdue 3 weeks ago, and it snowed so much they couldn't play. But let me share this to you, that since we began covering college baseball in 2013, we've developed a pretty good Buckeye audience. In fact, more than 200,000 unique computers across Ohio and the bordering states where the Buckeyes recruit. Given the brand, there are 2 Big Ten titles since 2016, the 2 regional appearances, 16 and 18, and the kids with local ties who have played there. And I'm talking about Connor Pohl from Arcanum, and Seth Lonsway of Salina, Aaron Hughes from Tip City, and Adam Niemeyer from Minster, and Tyler Keene and Garrett Peters. I will say this, that it is the single largest baseball audience that we have. So you can say what you want to about 11-21 and only covering teams that win, but sometimes, like the commercial, you got to give the people what they want, and they're not going to be 11-21 for very long. That's a very talented staff, and as we said at the Open tonight, you got to play the game to get better. You got to learn. You got to play to learn how to win, and they're going to learn how to win pretty soon. Because if you don't, heads roll, coaches change, lives are upturned, and the rest is history. So they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
We will see. All right. I think that just about does it, except I want to give a shout out to Coldwater's Madison Wendell, who got the Cavs a victory tonight by throwing a no-hitter. So congratulations, Madison, and to the Cavs. They are 13-1 in softball. Greg Billing wrote about your defending state champion Bradford Railroaders, who are doing it this year without Skip Miller. Off to a really great start. Steve Blackledge will have a story on tomorrow's pages of PressProsMagazine.com, the Central Ohio page, about the 3 strong programs in the OCC at the Olentangy High Schools. Orange has a phenomenal prospect who is a full-ride shortstop to Vanderbilt. So look for that on the pages of Press Pros, and hopefully the weather will cooperate and we'll get some of these games in so that our best players can get out on the field and we can show them to you via the pages of PressProsMagazine.com.
Well, I also want to put a shout out to Evan Robertson, who wrote to us this over the weekend. I just got his email, and he says, my dad turned 95 years young this weekend and reads Press Pros, enjoys reading Press Pros because he said he likes the coverage you have and the variety of things, and as a retired or as a former high school baseball coach, football coach, basketball coach, back in the day, you coached them all if you coached one. So, Evan, we appreciate you letting us know, and if your dad's watching tonight, or if you're watching tonight, make sure you tell him that we send a shout out to him, and 95 more just like this one, I hope.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. We appreciate all you guys who read and write to us. A very robust Press Pros Reader Speaks feedback tonight. We appreciate that. Make sure you patronize all our sponsors. We thank them all. We thank Lehman's Hardware and Old Time General Store for sponsoring the Lowdown and for bringing you the Huddle Show, as it's always fun to interact with all of you.
Don't go to Lehman's and think you're just going to hang around there for 30 minutes.
No.
It won't work.
No. Way too much to see. But you will love every minute you spend there. So with that, we will thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you on the pages of PressProsMagazine.com or out at your favorite games. And Mr. Folks, what do we tell our friend to do at the end of every Press Pros Huddle Show?
Well, Truman, go to bed, and Debbie Parker, thanks for watching.
Absolutely right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a great evening.